The industrial freezer hummed like a dying animal. Elena Vasquez pressed her palms against the frosted metal door, her breath coming out in desperate white clouds that disappeared into the darkness. Her fingers had gone numb 10 minutes ago. Or maybe it was 20. Time moved differently when you were dying. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, someone help me." But no one was coming. The Whitmore mansion's kitchen was 3 floors below the main living areas, tucked away where the help belonged, out of sight, out of mind, disposable. Elena had learned that lesson the hard way over the past 8 months of working here. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. She'd learned a lot of hard lessons. Her legs gave out, and she slid down the door until she was sitting on the frozen concrete floor. The cold bit through her thin uniform, through her skin, reaching for her bones. She hugged her knees to her chest, trying to conserve what little warmth remained in her body. "This is how I die," she thought distantly. "Locked in a freezer because I said no." 24 hours earlier, Elena's biggest problem had been the grease stain on her only good pair of work pants. She'd stood in the cramped bedroom of the apartment she shared with her sister Sophia, scrubbing at the fabric with dish soap and cold water, already knowing it was hopeless. "You're going to be late," Sophia called from the kitchen, where she was making coffee in the ancient percolator that coughed and sputtered like it had emphysema. I know. Elena gave up on the stain and pulled the pants on anyway. The Whitmores wouldn't notice. They never looked at her long enough to notice anything. That was the way she preferred it. Invisible meant safe. She grabbed her jacket too thin for Chicago's November cold, but it was all she had, and kissed Sophia's cheek on her way out. Her sister was already bent over her laptop, studying for her biology midterm at Northwestern University. Sophia's scholarship covered tuition, but Elena covered everything else. Rent, food, books. The life they were building in America, brick by careful brick. The bus ride to the Whitmore estate took 45 minutes, 3 transfers, and passed through neighborhoods that got progressively wealthier until Elena felt like she was traveling to another planet. By the time she arrived at the massive iron gates, the November wind was cutting through her jacket like it wasn't even there. The Whitmore mansion sprawled across 2 acres in Lincoln Park, all stone and glass and old money that didn't need to announce itself. Richard Whitmore had made his fortune in pharmaceutical manufacturing. His wife Catherine collected art and chaired charity boards. Their son Marcus collected DUIs and assault charges that mysteriously disappeared before going to trial. Elena knew because she'd heard the other staff whispering about it in the kitchen. About how Marcus thought the help existed for his entertainment. About girls who'd quit suddenly without explanation. About how the Whitmores always made problems go away. She'd kept her distance from Marcus for 8 months. Stayed quiet, stayed invisible, did her work and left. Yesterday, her luck ran out. Elena entered through the service entrance, checking in with Mrs. Chen, the head of household staff. The older woman barely glanced up from her schedule. "3rd floor needs full cleaning today. The Whitmores are hosting a dinner party tomorrow, so everything needs to be perfect. Start with the guest suites." "Yes, ma'am." Elena gathered her supplies. The industrial-strength cleaning products, the microfiber cloths, the vacuum that weighed more than she did, and took the service elevator up to the 3rd floor. The guest wing was usually empty, which made it her favorite assignment. No one watching, no one judging, just her and the work. She started in the blue room, so named for the hand-painted wallpaper that probably cost more than Sophia's entire year of tuition. Elena worked methodically, dusting, vacuuming, changing linens that felt like sleeping on clouds. The Whitmore's wealth didn't impress her anymore, it just made her tired. All this space for people who barely used it, while she and Sophia shared a studio apartment where they could touch opposite walls at the same time. She was cleaning the ensuite bathroom when she heard the door open behind her. "Well, hello there." Elena's stomach dropped. She turned slowly to find Marcus Whitmore leaning against the doorframe, blocking her exit. He was 28, tall, with the kind of good looks that money-maintained personal trainers, dermatologists, tailored clothes that hid the softness of a man who'd never worked a day in his life. His eyes were glassy, drunk or high or both. It was barely noon. "Mr. Whitmore," Elena said carefully, setting down her cleaning spray. "I'm almost finished here. I can come back later if don't rush on my account." He stepped into the bathroom, and the space suddenly felt suffocatingly small. "I've been meaning to talk to you. What's your name again?" "Elena, sir. Elena." He said it slowly, tasting it. "Pretty name. You're pretty. Has anyone ever told you that?" Every survival instinct Elena possessed started screaming. She tried to edge toward the door, but Marcus shifted, cutting off her path with deliberate casualness. "Excuse me, sir. I need to finish my other rooms. They can wait." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You know, I've noticed you around. Always so quiet, so obedient. I like that." "Mr. Whitmore, please. Marcus. Call me Marcus." He reached out and touched her hair. Elena flinched back, her spine hitting the marble counter. "Don't be shy. I'm very generous with the staff I like. I could make things easier to you. Better pay, better hours. You're supporting your sister, right? Northwestern's expensive." Elena's blood went cold. He'd been asking about her, learning about her, planning this. "I appreciate the offer," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "But I'm fine with my current arrangement. Now please, I really need to." His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. The grip was hard enough to bruise. "I don't think you understand how things work here." The friendly mask slipped, revealing something ugly underneath. "When I offer you something, you say yes. When I want your attention, you give it. That's how this goes. Let go of me." Elena tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Or what?" Marcus laughed. "You'll complain to my mother? Call the police? Do you know how many girls have tried that? Do you know what happened to them?" Elena did the only thing she could think of. She stomped down hard on his instep and shoved him backward when he yelped in surprise. Then she ran. She made it halfway down the hall before he caught her. Marcus grabbed her arm and spun her around, his face twisted with rage. "You little bitch! Get away from me!" Elena's voice echoed through the empty hallway. "Someone help." But there was no one. The family was out. Most of the staff worked on the lower floors. She was alone up here with a man who'd clearly decided she belonged to him. "No one's coming," Marcus said, breathing hard. His eyes were wild now, all pretense of civility gone. "You just made a very big mistake." He dragged her toward the service stairs. Elena fought, clawing at his hands, trying to break free, but he was stronger and meaner and completely unbothered by her resistance. They descended 2 flights, her feet barely touching the steps, until they reached the basement level, the kitchen level. Mrs. Chen was nowhere to be seen. The other staff must have been on break. Marcus hauled Elena past the industrial ovens, the prep stations, straight to the walk-in freezer in the back. "You want to say no to me?" He yanked open the freezer door. The temperature inside was well below 0, designed to keep sides of beef and cases of seafood frozen solid. "Let's see how you feel after you cool off." "No, please." Elena grabbed the doorframe, trying to resist, but Marcus was relentless. He shoved her hard, and she stumbled inside, her feet sliding on the icy floor. "Maybe a few hours in here will teach you some manners." Marcus's smile was cruel. "Don't worry, I'll let you out eventually. Probably." The door slammed shut. The lock engaged with a heavy metallic click, and Elena was alone in the darkness and the cold. That was over 2 hours ago, maybe 3. Elena had lost track. She'd screamed until her throat was raw, pounded on the door until her fists were bruised and bleeding. Tried to find an emergency release, but Marcus must have disabled it. There was just a blank panel where the button should have been. Now she sat on the frozen floor, conserving energy, trying not to panic. Hypothermia was setting in. She could feel it in the way her thoughts were getting fuzzy, the way she couldn't feel her fingers or toes anymore, the way her shivering had started to slow down, which she knew from a documentary she'd watched with Sophia was a very bad sign. She thought about her sister, about how Sophia would come home from her study group tonight to find Elena gone, how she'd wait and worry and eventually call the police, how the police would contact the Whitmores, who would say Elena simply didn't show up for work, how Sophia would be left alone, wondering what happened, unable to pay rent, forced to drop out of school, all because Elena had said no. Tears froze on her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Sophia," she whispered to the darkness. "I'm so sorry." The sound of voices filtered through the thick door, faint, muffled, but definitely there. Elena's heart lurched. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She crawled to the door instead, pounding weakly against the metal. "Help," she croaked. Her voice was barely audible even to herself. "Please, help me." The voices got louder. 2 men, from the sound of it. One she didn't recognize, deep, calm, authoritative. The other was Mrs. Chen's assistant, James. "Shouldn't be locked," James was saying. "We never lock the freezer during the day. There's too much inventory movement. Open it. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The unfamiliar voice. It left no room for argument. Yes, Mr. Romano. Romano. Elena's frozen brain tried to place the name. Romano. Dante Romano. She'd heard the staff mention him in hushed tones. He owned this property, leased it to the Whitmores. He came by occasionally to inspect his investment. He was something else, too. Something people didn't say out loud, but everyone understood. The lock disengaged. The door swung open. Warm air rushed in, feeling like fire against Elena's frozen skin. She looked up through blurred vision and saw two figures silhouetted against the kitchen lights. Jesus Christ, James breathed. Elena? The second man, Romano, moved fast. One moment he was in the doorway. The next he was crouching beside her, his hands hovering near her shoulders but not quite touching. Can you hear me? His voice was steady, professional. How long have you been in here? I don't. Elena's teeth chattered so hard she could barely speak. Hours, 2, maybe 3. Call an ambulance, Dante ordered James without looking away from Elena. Now. Yes, sir. Dante shrugged out of his jacket, expensive, probably cashmere, and wrapped it around Elena's shoulders. It was warm from his body heat, and she instinctively burrowed into it. Can you stand? I don't think so. I'm going to carry you, all right? Elena nodded weakly. She felt his arms slide under her knees and around her back, lifting her with surprising ease. The movement made her dizzy, made the world tilt and spin, but his hold was steady. He carried her out of the freezer, through the kitchen, to a small staff break room where he set her carefully on the worn couch. Someone James maybe brought blankets. Dante wrapped them around her methodically, efficiently, his dark eyes never leaving her face. What's your name? Elena. Elena Vasquez. Elena, I need you to stay awake. Can you do that for me? She nodded, though her eyelids felt impossibly heavy. How did this happen? Dante's voice remained calm, but Elena caught something underneath a coldness that made her think of steel. She hesitated. The Whitmores were powerful. They made problems disappear. If she told the truth, what would happen to her? To Sophia? But then she thought about dying in that freezer. About Marcus's smile as he locked her inside. About how many other girls he'd hurt because no one stopped him. Marcus Whitmore, she whispered. He tried to. I said no. So he locked me. In there. Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air around him. A subtle tightening, like a predator catching a scent. Where is he now? I don't know. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The ambulance. Elena. Dante waited until she met his eyes. They were dark brown, almost black, and absolutely unreadable. You're going to be all right. Do you understand? No one is going to hurt you again. It should have sounded like an empty promise. Elena had heard plenty of those in her life. But the way Dante Romano said it, with that quiet certainty, made her believe him. The paramedics arrived and took over, checking her vitals, wrapping her in heated blankets, preparing to transport her. Elena watched through the controlled chaos as Dante stepped aside, pulling out his phone. She couldn't hear what he said, but she saw his face, saw the cold fury that had replaced the professional concern, and she understood that Marcus Whitmore had just made a very serious mistake. Northwestern Memorial Hospital's emergency room had seen Elena through the worst night of her life. Hypothermia, they said. Stage 2, bordering on stage 3. Another hour in that freezer and her body would have started shutting down organs. As it was, she had frostbite on 3 fingers and both feet, severe bruising on her wrists from Marcus's grip, and trauma the doctors couldn't measure with their instruments. Sophia hadn't left her side for 12 hours. You should go home, Elena said weakly from her hospital bed. It was morning now, pale November sunlight filtering through the blinds. You have class. I'm not going anywhere. Sophia's eyes were red from crying. She was 22, 5 years younger than Elena, and she still looked at her older sister like she hung the moon. What happened, Elena? Really happened? Elena told her. All of it. The assault attempt, the freezer, the hours of thinking she would die. Sophia's face went from horror to rage and back again. We're pressing charges, Sophia said fiercely. That bastard tried to kill you. We're going to the police. And say what? Elena's voice was tired. That the son of one of Chicago's wealthiest families locked his maid in a freezer? You think they'll believe me over him? There's evidence. The frostbite, the bruises, could have happened anywhere. Could have been an accident. I fell. I got locked in by mistake. I'm just a confused immigrant who doesn't understand how things work. Elena had spent all night thinking about this. The Whitmores have lawyers, Sophia. They have money and connections. They'll bury me. So what, we do nothing? Sophia's hands clenched into fists. We let him get away with it? Before Elena could answer, there was a knock on the door. A man entered mid-50s, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than their monthly rent. Behind him, 2 younger men in dark suits flanked the doorway like sentries. Miss Vasquez, the older man said politely. My name is Vincent Castellano. I work for Dante Romano. May I have a moment of your time? Sophia moved protectively in front of Elena's bed. Who's Dante Romano? The man who found your sister. Vincent's voice was gentle, but his eyes were sharp. The man who likely saved her life. Elena remembered those dark eyes, that calm voice. The jacket that had probably cost more than she made in a month, wrapped around her frozen shoulders without hesitation. What do you want? Elena asked carefully. To help. Vincent pulled a chair closer to the bed and sat, deliberately making himself less intimidating. Mr. Romano asked me to check on your condition and to offer whatever assistance you might need. We don't need charity, Sophia said quickly. It's not charity. Vincent's expression was patient. Your sister worked at a property Mr. Romano owns. What happened to her happened on his property, while she was employed there. He takes that very seriously. The Whitmores lease the property, Elena said. It's not his responsibility. Mr. Romano disagrees. Vincent pulled out a leather folder. I've taken the liberty of reviewing your situation. You're supporting your sister through university. You've been sending money back to your mother in Guatemala. You live in a studio apartment in Pilsen and work 60-hour weeks between the Whitmore estate and a weekend cleaning job in the Loop. Elena felt exposed, vulnerable. How do you... It's Mr. Romano's business to know things. Vincent's tone suggested this should be obvious. Now, here's what's going to happen. Your medical bills will be covered, all of them, including any follow-up care you need. You'll receive full pay for the time you're unable to work. And when you're ready, there's a position available at one of Mr. Romano's other properties. Better pay, better hours, better. Protection. Protection from what? Sophia demanded. Vincent looked at her, with something like sympathy. From men like Marcus Whitmore. The words hung in the air like smoke. Why? Elena asked. Why would he do this for me? I'm nobody. Just a maid he found in a freezer. Mr. Romano has certain principles. Vincent chose his words carefully. He believes people who work for him should be safe. What Marcus Whitmore did violated that principle. Badly. So this is about his pride, Sophia said bitterly. About his property being disrespected. No. Vincent's voice hardened slightly. This is about a young woman who nearly died because she refused to be victimized. Mr. Romano respects that, and he's going to make sure Marcus Whitmore understands his mistake. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with hypothermia. What does that mean? It means you don't need to worry about Marcus Whitmore anymore. Vincent stood, placing a business card on the bedside table. That's my number. If you need anything at all, you call. Day or night. Understood? Elena nodded numbly. After Vincent left, Sophia picked up the card, studying it like it might bite her. This is Mafia, Elena. You know that, right? Dante Romano isn't some good Samaritan. I know what he is. Elena stared at the ceiling tiles. But right now, he's the only person offering to help. There's always a price, maybe. Elena thought about dying alone in that freezer, about Marcus's cruel smile, about how many other women he'd hurt because no one had stopped him. But maybe some prices are worth paying. Dante Romano's office occupied the top floor of a building in River North that officially housed legitimate import-export businesses. The paperwork was clean. The taxes were paid. Everything looked respectable to anyone who cared to look. Most people in Chicago knew better than to look too closely. Vincent arrived at 9 a.m. with his report. Dante sat behind his mahogany desk, reading financial statements, but looked up when his consigliere entered. How is she? Stable. Recovering. The doctors say she was lucky another hour and we'd be having a different conversation. Vincent settled into the chair across from Dante. I offered her the standard package. Medical bills, lost wages, new position. She's hesitant, but she'll accept. The sister's suspicious. Smart girl. Dante set down his papers. What else? Vincent pulled out his phone, scrolling through notes. Elena Vasquez, 26. Arrived in the U.S. from Guatemala 8 years ago on a work visa that she's maintained legally. Clean record. Not even a parking ticket. Works 2 jobs to support her sister Sophia through Northwestern. Sends money home to their mother monthly. By all accounts, she's exactly what she appears to be, a hardworking woman trying to build a better life. And Marcus Whitmore? Vincent's expression darkened. Where do I start? 3 DUIs that never made it to court. 2 assault charges that disappeared. Sexual harassment. Complaints from 4 different women over the past 6 years, all settled quietly with NDAs and payoffs. His parents have been cleaning up his messes since he was a teenager. Tell me about the women. 2 former employees at Whitmore Properties. 1 server at a restaurant he frequents. 1 college student he met at a bar. Vincent pulled up photos on his phone. All young, all financially vulnerable, all too scared to fight back after the family lawyers got involved. Dante's jaw tightened. Where is he now? The Whitmore estate. He's been there since yesterday. From what I can tell, his parents don't know what happened yet. Mrs. Chen found Elena before anyone could report it, and she called us before calling the Whitmores. She called us? She knows you own the property. She's worked for this family long enough to understand how things work. Vincent paused. The question is, what do you want to do about it? Dante stood and walked to the window overlooking the Chicago River. Below, people moved through their morning routines, coffee runs, commutes, normal lives untouched by the darker currents that ran beneath the city's surface. What I want, Dante said quietly, is to walk into that mansion and put a bullet between Marcus Whitmore's eyes. That would be satisfying, Vincent agreed. Also stupid. His father has connections to the mayor, the governor, half the city council. You kill their golden boy, and we'll have heat we can't handle. I know. Dante turned back from the window. Which is why we're going to do something worse. Worse than killing him? We're going to take away everything that makes him feel powerful. Dante's voice was cold, calculating. His family's protection, his money, his reputation, his freedom. We're going to strip it all away piece by piece until he's just another criminal in a cage. Vincent smiled slowly. You want to destroy him legally. I want him to understand that there are consequences. Dante returned to his desk. Nobody touches people under my protection. Nobody locks a woman in a freezer and walks away. The Whitmores have been getting away with covering for their son because nobody's called them on it. That changes today. The parents are the problem, Vincent said. Richard Whitmore will throw money and lawyers at this until it goes away. He's done it before. Then we make it impossible to ignore. Dante pulled up his computer, accessing files he'd been keeping on the Whitmore family for years. Richard Whitmore's pharmaceutical company has been under FDA investigation twice. Both times, the investigations died quietly. I want to know why. You think he's dirty? Everyone's dirty, Vincent. It's just a question of how dirty and whether anyone's looking hard enough. Dante scrolled through documents. His company manufactures opioids. The timing of those investigations coincided with major donations to certain politicians' campaigns. That's not coincidence. Vincent leaned forward, studying the screen. You want to expose corruption in his business to force his hand with Marcus. I want Richard Whitmore to understand that protecting his son is going to cost him everything. Dante's eyes were hard. And I want Marcus to know he's not untouchable. That badge of wealth and privilege he's been hiding behind? I'm going to rip it off and show everyone what's underneath. This will take time. Investigations, evidence gathering, legal maneuvering. I have time. Dante closed the laptop. What I don't have is patience for men who hurt women and think they can get away with it. So here's what we're going to do. He outlined his plan. It was meticulous, calculated, and absolutely ruthless. By the time Vincent left the office an hour later, wheels were already in motion. Anonymous tips to federal investigators about Whitmore Pharmaceuticals' questionable business practices. Calls to journalists who specialized in exposing corruption. Quiet conversations with people who owed Dante favors: judges, prosecutors, law enforcement who understood the difference between the letter of the law and actual justice. And most importantly, protection for Elena Vasquez. Because Dante Romano had learned long ago that the best way to fight monsters was to make sure their victims survived to tell the truth. Marcus Whitmore woke up at noon with a hangover and a vague sense that he'd done something the night before. Something with the new Maid. What was her name? Elena something. He stumbled to his bathroom, swallowed 4 aspirin, and tried to remember. There'd been an argument. She'd fought back, which was annoying. He'd put her somewhere to cool off. Where was that? The freezer. Marcus froze, memories clicking into place. The walk-in freezer in the basement kitchen. He'd locked her in there yesterday around noon. What time was it now? He grabbed his phone. 12:17 p.m. The next day. Oh shit. Marcus ran downstairs, still in his pajamas, his heart hammering. 24 hours. He'd left her in there for 24 hours. That was bad. That was really bad. The kitchen was empty when he burst in. No staff, no activity. He yanked open the freezer door, already preparing excuses. The freezer was empty. Marcus stared at the vacant space, his mind racing. Where was she? Had she gotten out? Had someone found her? Was she dead? Looking for something? Marcus spun around. A man stood in the kitchen doorway, tall, dark-haired, maybe 40, wearing a suit that screamed money and power. Behind him, 2 other men in similar suits flanked the entrance. "Who the hell are you?" Marcus demanded, trying to sound authoritative despite standing there in his pajamas. "Dante Romano." The man's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "I own this property. We need to talk." Marcus's stomach dropped. He knew that name. Everyone in Chicago knew that name, even if they pretended not to. About what? About the woman you locked in my freezer. Dante stepped closer. He moved like someone who'd never been afraid in his life. About what you did to her. About what's going to happen next. "I don't know what you're talking about." Marcus backed up, his spine hitting the counter. "Some maid must have gotten locked in by accident. I'll make sure it doesn't." "Don't." Dante's voice dropped to something colder. "Don't insult both of us by lying. Elena Vasquez told me exactly what happened. The assault attempt, your retaliation. The hours she spent freezing to death because you were angry. She said no. She's lying. She probably..." Dante moved so fast, Marcus didn't see it coming. One moment there was distance between them. The next Dante had him by the throat, slamming him back against the refrigerator. Not choking, not yet. Just holding him there with effortless strength. "Listen very carefully," Dante said softly. "I'm going to explain how this works. Elena Vasquez works on my property. That makes Creasively being her my responsibility. What you did to her was done to someone under my protection. Do you understand what that means?" Marcus couldn't speak, could barely breathe. He managed a small nod. "Good." Dante released him. Marcus slumped against the fridge, gasping. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay away from Elena. You're not going to contact her, not going to threaten her, not going to even think about her. Because if you do, I'll know. And then you and I will have a much less pleasant conversation. You can't threaten me." Marcus tried to sound brave, but his voice shook. Your father is about to have much bigger problems than you." Dante straightened his jacket. "The FDA is reopening their investigation into Whitmore Pharmaceuticals. The IRS is taking a fresh look at your family's tax returns. Several journalists are asking very interesting questions about campaign donations and regulatory decisions. Your father's empire is about to come under a microscope." Marcus felt cold that had nothing to do with the nearby freezer. "You did this." "I did nothing," Dante said pleasantly. "I simply made sure the right people were looking at the right information. Everything that happens from here on out is because of choices your family made. Choices that are finally catching up with you. My father will fight this. He has lawyers, he has money, connections." "Yes, I know." Dante headed for the door, his men moving with him. "But here's the thing about empires built on corruption, Marcus. They only stand as long as nobody looks too closely. And right now, everyone's looking." He paused at the doorway, glancing back. "One more thing. If Elena Vasquez suffers any consequences from what happened, if she loses work, if anyone harasses her, if she so much as gets a threatening phone call, I'm going to assume it came from you. And then the conversation we have won't be about investigations or legal troubles. It'll be much more personal. Are we clear?" Marcus nodded, unable to speak. After they left, he slid down to sit on the kitchen floor, his whole body shaking. This couldn't be happening. It was just a maid. Just some girl who'd said no when she should have said yes. It wasn't supposed to become to this. His phone buzzed. A text from his father. "Come to my office now. We need to talk." Marcus closed his eyes. The walls were closing in. And somewhere in a hospital bed across the city, Elena Vasquez was learning that sometimes, when you were pushed down, someone powerful decided to pull you back up. Richard Whitmore's office smelled like Cuban cigars and old money. Marcus stood in front of his father's desk like a schoolboy, called to the principal's office. Except the principal was a pharmaceutical magnate worth $300 million, and the punishment wouldn't be detention. "Sit down," Richard said without looking up from the documents spread across his desk. Marcus sat. His father continued, reading for another minute a deliberate power play, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Catherine Whitmore sat in the corner, impeccably dressed as always, her expression unreadable. Finally, Richard looked up. "The FDA is reopening their investigation into our manufacturing facility in Indiana. The IRS is requesting 7 years of tax documentation. And I've received calls from 3 different journalists asking about our relationship with Senator Morrison's campaign." His voice was dangerously calm. "Would you like to explain to me what the hell is going on?" "I don't know what—" "Don't lie to me, Marcus." Richard's hand slammed down on the desk. "I had a very interesting call this morning from a mutual acquaintance. He wanted to know why Dante Romano was asking questions about our family. Why Romano's people have been making inquiries. Why Romano himself paid a visit to our home yesterday while we were out." Marcus felt his mouth go dry. "Dad, I can." "Explain." "Then explain." Catherine spoke for the first time, her voice ice cold. "Explain why one of the most dangerous men in Chicago is suddenly interested in our family." Marcus told them. He tried to make it sound less bad, just a misunderstanding with an employee. She overreacted. He was trying to teach her a lesson, but his parents' expressions grew darker with each word. "You locked her in a freezer?" Catherine's voice could have frozen water. "For how long?" "I don't know. A few hours, maybe 24 hours. Richard said flatly. "She was in there for 24 hours. She nearly died. Romano found her and had her taken to the hospital. And now he's declared war on this family because my son can't keep his hands to himself." "It wasn't like that." "It's exactly like that." Richard stood, his face flushed with rage. "Do you know how many times I've cleaned up your messes? How much money I've spent making your problems disappear? The DUIs, the assault charges, the harassment complaints? I've paid off lawyers, judges, victims. I've called in every favor I have to keep you out of prison. I'm your son. You're a liability." Catherine's words cut like glass. "You're a spoiled, entitled liability who's finally pushed someone we can't buy off." Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. "What do you mean you can't buy him off?" "Everyone has a price. Not Dante Romano." Richard returned to his seat, suddenly looking 10 years older. "Romano doesn't need money. He doesn't need favors. He operates by a completely different set of rules, and you violated one of his cardinal ones. You hurt someone under his protection. She's just a maid. She's his maid now." Richard's voice echoed through the office. "The moment he found her in that freezer, she became his responsibility. And by hurting her, you declared war on him. Do you understand what that means?" Marcus didn't answer. "It means," Catherine said quietly, "that everything we've built is at risk. Our company, our reputation, our freedom. Romano has connections we can't match. He knows things we thought were buried, and he's going to use all of it to destroy us, unless we give him what he wants." "What does he want?" Richard and Catherine exchanged a glance. "You," Richard said finally. "He wants you to face consequences. Real consequences, not the kind I can make disappear with money." "No." Marcus stood, backing toward the door. "No, you can't just hand me over to— We're not handing you over to anyone." Richard's voice was tired. "But we're not protecting you anymore either. You're going to turn yourself in to the police. You're going to confess to assault and unlawful imprisonment. You're going to take responsibility for what you did. Are you insane?" "I'll go to prison." "Yes," Catherine said simply. "You will. For a few years, probably. And when you get out, you'll find the trust fund your grandfather left you has been restructured. You'll get enough to live on, but not enough to hurt anyone else." Marcus felt his world crumbling. "You're disowning me." "We're saving the family," Richard corrected. "Romano gave us a choice: sacrifice you, or watch everything we've built burn to the ground. It's not a hard decision. I'm your son. You stopped being our son when you started being our problem." Catherine stood, smoothing her skirt. "The lawyer will be here in an hour. He'll arrange your surrender to the police. I suggest you use this time to pack." "Mom, don't." Her voice cracked, just slightly. Don't make this harder than it already is. You did this to yourself, Marcus. We can't save you from your own choices anymore." They left him standing in the office, surrounded by the trappings of wealth that were about to become a memory. Marcus's hands shook as he pulled out his phone. There had to be someone who could help, someone who could make this go away. He scrolled through his contacts, lawyers, friends, people who owed him favors. But as he looked at each name, he realized the truth. Nobody was going to stand up to Dante Romano for him. Nobody thought he was worth that kind of risk. He was alone. For the first time in his privileged, protected life, Marcus Whitmore understood what it felt like to be powerless. Elena was released from the hospital 3 days later with prescription painkillers for the lingering effects of frostbite and instructions to follow up with a specialist. Sophia helped her into their tiny apartment, hovering like a nervous bird. "I'm fine," Elena insisted, settling onto their second-hand couch. "Really? The doctors said I'm healing well." "You almost died." Sophia's voice broke. "You almost died and I didn't even know where you were." Elena pulled her sister into a hug, feeling her shake with suppressed sobs. "I'm here. I'm okay. We're okay." But were they? The apartment felt different now, smaller, more vulnerable. Every sound made Elena jump. Every knock on the door sent her heart racing. The trauma wasn't just physical. It was burrowed deep in her psyche, making her afraid of her own shadow. Her phone rang. Vincent Castellano's number. "Miss Vasquez," his familiar voice said. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thank you." "Good. I'm calling because Mr. Romano would like to meet with you, if you're feeling up to it." Elena's stomach tightened. "Why?" "There are some things he'd like to discuss. About your employment situation and other matters. He can come to you if leaving home is difficult." Elena glanced around their cramped studio, the Murphy bed that didn't quite fold up properly, the kitchenette with one working burner, the bathroom door that didn't lock. She didn't want Dante Romano seeing how she lived. "I can come to him." "Where?" Vincent gave her an address in River North. "Tomorrow at 2 p.m., if that worked for her." After she hung up, Sophia immediately started worrying. "You shouldn't go alone. What if it's not safe? What if he's the only reason I'm alive?" Elena countered gently. "I need to hear what he has to say." The next afternoon, Elena took the bus to River North, dressed in the nicest clothes. She owned a simple black dress and cardigan, both showing their age but clean and pressed. The address led her to an elegant building with a doorman who somehow knew she was expected. "Top floor, Miss Vasquez." "Mr. Castellano is waiting." The elevator ride up felt like ascending to another world. When the doors opened, Vincent was indeed waiting, offering a polite smile. "Thank you for coming. This way." He led her through a reception area decorated with understated elegance, no flashy displays of wealth, just quality and taste. They passed several closed doors before reaching one at the end of the hall. Vincent knocked once, then opened it. "Miss Vasquez, sir." Dante Romano's office was surprisingly warm. Large windows overlooked the Chicago River, letting in afternoon sunlight. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes that looked actually read, not just decorative. A seating area with comfortable leather chairs faced his desk. Dante stood when she entered, gesturing to the chairs. "Elena, thank you for coming. Please, sit. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be nice." Her throat was dry. Vincent brought a glass, then quietly excused himself, closing the door behind him. Elena sat, hyper-aware of being alone with this man who'd saved her life, but whose reputation preceded him like a shadow. Dante settled into the chair across from her, not behind his desk, a deliberate choice to make this feel less like an interrogation. "How are you healing?" he asked. "The doctors say I'll be fine. The frostbite wasn't as bad as they feared." "Good." He paused. "I want to talk to you about what happens next. You don't have to worry about medical bills, those are covered. And you'll continue to receive your full pay while you recover." Vincent mentioned that. "Thank you. But I don't understand why you're doing this." Dante studied her for a moment. "You worked on my property. What happened to you happened there. That makes it my responsibility. Most landlords wouldn't see it that way. I'm not most landlords." A slight smile. "Elena, I'm going to be direct with you. Marcus Whitmore is being arrested this afternoon. He's going to be charged with assault and unlawful imprisonment. Given his family's history of making charges disappear, the DA is taking this case very seriously. There will be a trial." Elena's hands tightened around her water glass. They'll need me to testify. Yes, and the Whitmore family lawyers will try to destroy your credibility. They'll dig into your immigration status, your work history, anything they can use to make you look unreliable. It's going to be brutal. So I should just let him get away with it? Anger flared in her chest. Because I'm too vulnerable to fight back? No. Dante's voice was firm. You should fight back with everything you have. But you should do it with protection. What kind of protection? Legal representation, financial support so you don't have to work while the case proceeds, security to make sure no one tries to intimidate you into dropping charges, and employment afterward, because the Whitmores will do everything they can to make sure you never work in this city again. Elena felt overwhelmed. That's too much. I can't accept all of that. Why not? Because nothing is free. There's always a price. You're right. Dante leaned forward, his dark eyes serious. So let me tell you what the price is. You testify truthfully. You let that jury see exactly what Marcus Whitmore did and why he did it. You stand up in that courtroom and refuse to be intimidated. That's what I'm asking from you. That's all? That's everything. His voice softened. Do you know how many women Marcus Whitmore has hurt? 4 that we know of, probably more. They all backed down, took settlements, signed NDAs. He's never faced real consequences, because his family's money and power made his victims disappear. You're the first one who can't disappear, because I won't let you. Elena understood then. This wasn't charity. It wasn't even really about her. It was about drawing a line, about saying that some things couldn't be fixed with money, that some people couldn't hurt others without consequences. Why me? She asked. Why did you decide I was worth protecting? Dante was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something that sounded almost like memory. A long time ago, someone helped me when they didn't have to. When I was vulnerable and scared and certain I was going to die, they gave me a chance to fight back, to survive. He met her eyes. I'm giving you the same chance. What you do with it is up to you. Elena thought about Marcus's cruel smile, about the hours in that freezer, sad, alone and terrified, about how many other women had suffered because no one stopped him. Okay, she said quietly. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. Good. Dante stood, walking to his desk and pulling out a folder. Then we start now. This is the lawyer who'll represent you, Sarah Chen, one of the best prosecutors in the state, working as your advocate. She'll prepare you for what's coming. These are the security arrangements you'll move to a safer apartment temporarily, just until the trial is over, and this is your new employment contract. He handed her the papers. Elena scanned them, her eyes widening at the salary. This can't be right. This is 3 times what I was making. You'll be working as a property manager for one of my residential buildings. It's a real job with real responsibilities. You'll earn that salary. I don't have experience managing. You'll learn. You're smart, organized, and you care about doing things right. That's more than most people bring to the job. Dante returned to his chair. Elena, I'm not asking you to be grateful. I'm asking you to be strong. Can you do that? Elena looked at the papers in her hands. A new job. A safe place to live. Legal protection. A chance to make Marcus Whitmore face what he'd done. A chance to stop being a victim and become something else. Yes, she said. I can do that. The arrest happened at 4 p.m., coordinated between the DA's office and Chicago PD to ensure no one could tip off the Whitmores ahead of time. Marcus was taken into custody at his parents' estate, walked out in handcuffs past photographers who'd been anonymously tipped about the timing. The image hit the news within an hour. Marcus Whitmore, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune, in handcuffs, his face a mask of humiliation and rage. By evening, every major outlet in Chicago was running the story. Whitmore heir arrested for assault. Billionaire's son charged after Maid nearly dies. Pattern of abuse. Emerges in Whitmore case. Sarah Chen held a press conference, standing beside photographs of the walk-in freezer, medical reports documenting Elena's injuries, and a timeline of Marcus's previous incidents that had mysteriously disappeared. This case represents a failure of our justice system, Sarah said, her voice steady and fierce. For years, Marcus Whitmore has been allowed to hurt people without consequences because his family's wealth protected him. That protection ends today. The evidence is overwhelming. The victim's testimony is credible. And this office is committed to ensuring that wealth and privilege do not place anyone above the law. The reporters erupted with questions. Sarah answered them all with devastating precision, painting a picture of systematic abuse enabled by family money and corrupt officials. In his office, Dante watched the press conference with Vincent beside him. Sarah's good, Vincent observed. She's making this about more than just Elena. She's making it about accountability. That's exactly what it needs to be. Dante closed the laptop. What about the other investigations? FDA is moving forward with Whitmore Pharmaceuticals. They found irregularities in drug testing data. IRS is still reviewing financial records, but preliminary findings suggest significant tax evasion through offshore accounts. The senator who received their donations is distancing himself as fast as possible. Good. Dante stood, looking out at the city lights beginning to flicker on as evening fell. And Elena? Moved into the new apartment this afternoon. Security is in place. Sarah's team is preparing her for testimony. Vincent paused. She's stronger than she looks, that one. She'd have to be. To survive what she survived and still be willing to fight back. Dante turned from the window. Make sure she has everything she needs. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. The Whitmores will come after her hard. Let them. Try. Dante's voice was cold. They'll find out what happens when they target someone under my protection. Across the city, in a modest but secure apartment in a building Dante Romano owned, Elena stood at the window looking out at Chicago's skyline. Sophia was unpacking their things, marveling at the space 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a bathroom with water pressure that actually worked. This is crazy, Sophia said for the 10th time. This apartment probably costs $4,000 a month. It's temporary, until the trial is over. But Elena wondered if anything would ever be temporary again. Her life had been fundamentally altered the moment she stepped into that freezer. There was no going back to who she'd been before. Her phone rang. Sarah Chen, calling to schedule their first preparation session. After hanging up, Elena caught her reflection in the window glass. A young woman who'd nearly died, who'd been saved by a man she barely knew, who was about to stand up in court and tell her story to the world. She looked different somehow. Harder, stronger, scared, but no longer helpless. Marcus Whitmore had tried to make her disappear. Instead, he'd turned her into something much more dangerous. A witness who wouldn't be silenced. And behind her stood Dante Romano, whose quiet protection was proving more powerful than the Whitmores' wealth ever could be. The trial was set for 3 months away. 3 months for Elena to heal, to prepare, to become strong enough to face her attacker in court. 3 months for the city to watch what happened when someone finally told powerful men that their money couldn't buy everything. 3 months for Marcus Whitmore to understand that some prices had to be paid, no matter how much you were worth. The preliminary hearing happened on a gray December morning. Elena sat in the front row of the courtroom, Sarah Chen beside her, as Marcus Whitmore was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit. His bail had been set at $2 million. His parents posted it immediately, but the judge had imposed strict conditions. House arrest, ankle monitor, no contact with the victim. Marcus looked diminished somehow. Prison clothes and circumstances had stripped away his veneer of privilege, revealing the scared, angry man underneath. His eyes found Elena's across the courtroom. The hatred in them was pure and venomous. She met his gaze and didn't look away. She'd been scared of him for long enough. The judge reviewed the charges: assault in the 2nd degree, unlawful imprisonment, reckless endangerment. Each one carried potential prison time. Together, they could put Marcus away for years. Marcus's lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Gerald Hawthorne, known for defending wealthy criminals, entered a plea of not guilty. "Your Honor," Hawthorne said smoothly, "my client maintains this was a tragic misunderstanding. Miss Vasquez accidentally became locked in a freezer due to a malfunctioning door mechanism. My client had no knowledge she was inside and certainly no intent to harm her." "That's a lie." The words burst out of Elena before she could stop them. Sarah gripped her arm in warning, but the damage was done. Judge Patricia Morrison looked at Elena over her glasses. "Miss Vasquez, you'll have your chance to testify at trial. Outbursts in my courtroom aren't helpful to your case." "I apologize, Your Honor," Elena said quietly, but she kept her eyes on Marcus. Let him see that she wasn't afraid anymore. The hearing concluded with the trial date set for February. As they filed out of the courtroom, Elena felt a presence behind her. She turned to find Dante Romano standing near the back row. He'd attended without announcing himself, just watching, ensuring she wasn't alone. Their eyes met across the crowded courtroom. He gave a single nod, not reassurance, not sympathy, just acknowledgement. "You're doing well. Keep going." Elena nodded back, understanding passing between them without words. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Sarah Chen gave a brief statement while Elena stood silent beside her, letting her lawyer do the talking. The cameras captured everything: Elena's calm expression, her refusal to show fear, her quiet strength. That night, the news coverage focused on the contrast between Marcus Whitmore in his orange jumpsuit and Elena Vasquez in her simple dark suit, standing with dignity beside one of Chicago's most formidable prosecutors. David versus Goliath, one commentator called it. A maid taking on a billionaire's son. But in Dante Romano's office, Vincent had a different observation. She's not David. She's something else. David was a warrior. Elena's a survivor who's learning to fight back. That's more dangerous, Dante agreed. Warriors know what they're getting into. Survivors have nothing left to lose. The months leading to trial were brutal for both sides. The Whitmore's lawyers filed motion after motion, trying to suppress evidence, discredit Elena's testimony, delay proceedings. Each motion was defeated by Sarah Chen's meticulous preparation. Meanwhile, the FBI's investigation into Whitmore Pharmaceuticals uncovered systematic fraud, falsified drug trial data, bribed FDA officials, offshore accounts used to hide profits. Richard and Catherine Whitmore were indicted on multiple federal charges. The empire was crumbling, and Marcus was at the center of the collapse. He tried to reach Elena once, violating his restraining order by showing up outside her building at 3 a.m., screaming threats from the sidewalk until security called the police. The violation added another charge and convinced the judge to revoke his bail. Marcus went back to jail to await trial. Elena watched it all from the safety of her new apartment, preparing her testimony with Sarah, learning to tell her story without breaking down, without letting the fear show. Sophia watched her sister transform from a scared woman who'd nearly died into someone harder, someone who'd learned that survival sometimes meant fighting back, even when the odds were impossible. "Are you okay?" Sophia asked one night, finding Elena standing at the window at 2 a.m., unable to sleep. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "I'm not the person I was before. I don't think I can ever be her again. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe not." Elena turned from the window. "But I miss feeling safe. I miss not being afraid all the time. You're the bravest person I know." "I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn. Too stubborn to let him win." Sophia hugged her sister. "That's the same thing, isn't it?" In February, as snow fell over Chicago, the trial began, and Elena Vasquez walked into that courtroom to face her attacker one final time, carrying the weight of every woman Marcus Whitmore had ever hurt, every victim who'd been too scared to speak. She was terrified, but she was done being silent. The Cook County Criminal Courthouse stood like a monument to justice on a cold February morning. Elena Vasquez sat in the witness preparation room with Sarah Chen, going over her testimony for the 100th time. Through the window, she could see protesters gathered on the courthouse steps, some holding signs supporting her, others defending Marcus Whitmore with signs reading, "Innocent until proven guilty," and "Stop the witch hunt." "They paid those people," Sarah said, noticing Elena's gaze. "The Whitmores hired a PR firm to make this look controversial. Don't let it get in your head. Too late." Elena turned from the window. "How do I do this, Sarah? How do I sit there and tell strangers about the worst moment of my life while he stares at me?" "You tell the truth. That's all you have to do." Sarah gripped Elena's hands. "The evidence is overwhelming. The medical reports, the forensics, the timeline. But the jury needs to see you, hear you, understand what he took from you. Your testimony is what makes this real. What if I freeze? What if I can't? You won't freeze. You're stronger than you think." Sarah's voice softened. "Elena, I've prosecuted dozens of cases. I've seen victims crumble, recant, run away. But you've shown up every single day. You've faced every deposition, every motion, every attempt to break you. You're still here. That's not weakness. That's steel." A knock on the door interrupted them. Vincent Castellano entered, his expression serious. "The jury's seated. Judge Morrison wants to begin in 20 minutes. He looked at Elena. "Mr. Romano wanted me to give you this." He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a card with a single sentence in elegant handwriting. "You are not alone in that room." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She'd seen Dante only twice since December, once at a brief meeting to discuss security protocols, once when he'd appeared unexpectedly at the courthouse during a pretrial hearing. He never said much, never made grand gestures, but his presence was like a wall between her and everything that wanted to hurt her. "Tell him thank you," she whispered. "You can tell him yourself. He's here." Vincent gestured toward the courtroom. "He'll be there every day of this trial. 20 minutes later, Elena walked into the courtroom for the first day of trial. The gallery was packed journalists, concerned citizens, curiosity seekers, and in the back row, Dante Romano, in a dark suit, his face impassive but his eyes tracking her every movement. Marcus Whitmore sat at the defense table looking thinner than Elena remembered, his expensive suit unable to hide the toll that 4 months in jail had taken. When their eyes met, she saw desperation mixed with hatred. He was a drowning man watching his life preserver float away. Judge Morrison called the court to order. The jury, 7 women, 5 men, faces carefully neutral, settled into their seats. Sarah Chen stood to deliver her opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about power and what happens when someone abuses it. Marcus Whitmore had every advantage in life: wealth, privilege, a family willing to protect him, no matter what he did. Elena Vasquez had none of those things. She was a young immigrant woman, working 2 jobs to support her sister through college, trying to build a better life through hard work and determination. Sarah's voice rang through the courtroom, clear and uncompromising. On November 15th of last year, Marcus Whitmore sexually assaulted Elena in the Whitmore family mansion. When she refused his advances and tried to escape, he hunted her down, dragged her to a basement freezer, and locked her inside. He left her there to freeze to death. 24 hours she was trapped in sub-zero temperatures with no food, no water, no hope of rescue. She survived by pure chance because Dante Romano, the property owner, happened to conduct an inspection that day. The jury's attention was absolute, Sarah continued, building her case brick by devastating brick. The defense will try to tell you this was an accident, that Elena somehow locked herself in the freezer, that Marcus Whitmore is the real victim here, a young man whose life is being ruined by false accusations. But the evidence will show you otherwise. The medical records documenting hypothermia and frostbite, the security footage showing Marcus dragging Elena through the mansion, the testimony of other women he's assaulted and intimidated, and most importantly, Elena's own words, telling you exactly what happened in that freezer and why. Sarah paused, letting the weight settle. Marcus Whitmore thought he could hurt Elena Vasquez without consequences, thought his family's money and power would protect him, just like it always had. This trial is about proving him wrong, about showing that in America, justice isn't just for the wealthy and connected. It's for everyone, including a maid locked in a freezer because she dared to say no. When Sarah sat down, Gerald Hawthorne rose for the defense. He was smooth, polished, every inch the high-priced attorney. Ladies and gentlemen, my client Marcus Whitmore is not a monster. He's a young man who made mistakes, yes, but who is now being sacrificed on the altar of public opinion and media hysteria. Hawthorne's voice was reasonable, sympathetic. The prosecution wants you to believe this was attempted murder. But where's the intent? Where's the malice? What actually happened was a tragic accident compounded by miscommunication. Elena felt her stomach turn as Hawthorne spun his version of events, Elena accidentally getting locked in a malfunctioning freezer. Marcus unaware she was inside. Everyone overreacting to a simple workplace accident. The prosecution will parade witnesses who claim Marcus has a history of inappropriate behavior. But these are disgruntled former employees, people with axes to grind, individuals who see a chance for a payday by jumping on the bandwagon. The truth is simpler and less sensational than they want you to believe. This was an accident, a terrible, unfortunate accident, and Marcus Whitmore shouldn't have his entire life destroyed because of it. The first witness was Dr. Michael Torres, the ER physician who'd treated Elena. He testified about her condition when she arrived: core body temperature of 92 degrees, severe frostbite, signs of prolonged hypothermia. In my medical opinion, Dr. Torres said gravely, if Miss Vasquez had been in that freezer another hour, she would have died. Her body was beginning to shut down non-essential functions. She was in the early stages of organ failure. Hawthorne tried to shake him on cross-examination. Isn't it true, doctor, that you can't determine exactly how long someone was exposed to cold temperatures? I can make an educated estimate based on the progression of symptoms. Miss Vasquez's condition was consistent with 20 to 24 hours of exposure. But you can't be certain? I'm certain she nearly died. The exact timeline is less important than the severity of her injuries. The second day of trial brought the security footage. The courtroom watched in silence as grainy video showed Marcus dragging Elena down the hallway, her struggling, him overpowering her. The timestamp was damning 12:17 p.m. on November 15th. Then footage from 24 hours later, Dante Romano and James opening the freezer door, finding Elena collapsed inside, her lips blue, her body unresponsive. Several jurors looked at Marcus with undisguised disgust. Elena saw him squirm in his seat, whispering frantically to Hawthorne. The third witness was Mrs. Chen, the head of household staff. She testified about Marcus's reputation among the employees, how young female staff members were warned to avoid being alone with him, how several had quit suddenly after incidents they wouldn't discuss. "Did you ever report these concerns to Richard or Catherine Whitmore?" Sarah asked. Mrs. Chen's face was pained. "Once. I told Mrs. Whitmore that we were having trouble retaining female staff because of Marcus's behavior. She told me to hire older women or men if it was such a problem." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. On cross-examination, Hawthorne attacked. "Isn't it true you were paid $100,000 by Dante Romano last December?" "Yes," Mrs. Chen admitted. "He gave me retirement money after 30 years of service." Convenient timing, don't you think? Just when you suddenly remembered all these incidents about Marcus Whitmore? "I didn't suddenly remember. I always knew. I just finally had protection enough to tell the truth." By the fourth day, the prosecution called its most devastating witness Amanda Price, a former Whitmore employee who'd settled a sexual harassment claim against Marcus 3 years earlier. Amanda was 28 now, a paralegal, composed and professional. But when Sarah asked her to describe what Marcus had done, her composure cracked. "He cornered me in the wine cellar," Amanda said, her voice shaking. "He put his hands on me, tried to kiss me, said if I was smart I'd be nice to him. When I pushed him away, he got angry. He grabbed my hair and slammed my head against the wine rack. I had a concussion. 6 stitches. What happened after that? His parents' lawyers offered me money to sign an NDA, $200,000 to never talk about what happened. I was 25, drowning in student loans, terrified. So I took it." Amanda looked directly at the jury. "I've regretted it every day since. Because I knew he'd do it to someone else. And he did. He did it to Elena." Hawthorne tried to discredit her. "You violated your non-disclosure agreement by testifying here today." "Yes, and I'm prepared to give back every cent if it means stopping him from hurting anyone else." "You're bitter. You want revenge." "I want accountability." Amanda's eyes were fierce. "There's a difference." On the 5th day, Elena took the stand. The courtroom fell silent as she was sworn in. Her hands trembled as she placed them on the Bible, but her voice was steady when she said, "I do." Sarah approached her with gentle confidence. "Elena, can you tell the jury what happened on November 15th? Elena took a deep breath and began. She told them about cleaning the guest suite, about Marcus appearing in the doorway, about his inappropriate comments and unwanted touching. Her voice wavered when she described him grabbing her, but she didn't stop. "I stomped on his foot and ran. I thought if I could just get to the main floor, find Mrs. Chen or another staff member, I'd be safe. But he caught me in the hallway." "What did he say when he caught you?" "He said I'd made a big mistake, that I was going to regret saying no to him." Elena's hands gripped the armrests of the witness chair. "He dragged me to the basement. I was fighting, trying to get away, but he was so much stronger. When we got to the kitchen, he opened the freezer door and pushed me inside." "What did you think when he locked you in?" "I thought I was going to die." Tears streamed down Elena's face now, but she kept talking. "It was so cold, so dark. I screamed until my throat was raw. I pounded on the door until my hands were bleeding. But nobody came. Nobody heard me." "How long were you in there?" "I don't know exactly. The cold made everything fuzzy, but it felt like forever. At some point I stopped being able to feel my fingers and toes. My thoughts got confused. I remember thinking about my sister, about how she'd never know what happened to me. I remember thinking this was how I died alone in the dark, freezing to death because I'd said no to a man who thought he owned me." The courtroom was absolutely silent. Several jurors were crying. Sarah let the moment breathe before asking, "What's the last thing you remember before losing consciousness?" "Praying. I was praying that someone would find me before it was too late." Elena looked directly at the jury. "And then Dante Romano opened that door. He saved my life." Hawthorne's cross-examination was brutal. He questioned every detail of Elena's story, suggested she'd embellished for sympathy, implied she'd been trying to seduce Marcus for financial gain. "Isn't it true you needed money, Miss Vasquez? Your sister's tuition? Your mother's medical bills back in Guatemala?" "Yes, I needed money. That's why I worked 2 jobs. Not why I would let someone assault me." "You're living in a luxury apartment now, aren't you?" "Paid for by Dante Romano? I'm living in a safe apartment temporarily, until the trial is over. After that, I'll pay my own rent from my salary at the job Mr. Romano helped me get. A real job that I earned. A job working for a known organized crime figure. That doesn't concern you? Sarah objected. Relevance, Your Honor? Sustained. Mr. Hawthorne, Miss Vasquez's current employment isn't on trial here. But the damage was done. Hawthorne had planted the seed Elena was connected to Dante Romano. Therefore, she couldn't be trusted. During a recess, Elena collapsed in the witness preparation room, shaking with adrenaline and exhaustion. You did beautifully, Sarah assured her. The jury believed you. I could see it in their faces. He made me sound like a gold digger. Like I'm only doing this for money. He made himself look desperate. Trust me, the jury saw through it. That evening, Elena sat in her apartment, too exhausted to eat, too wired to sleep. Sophia had made tea that sat cooling on the coffee table. The TV played news coverage of the trial, legal analysts debating, public opinion splitting along predictable lines. Her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Elena, Dante's voice, quiet and certain. I wanted to check on you. Today was difficult. You were there. You saw. I saw you handle Hawthorne like he was nothing. Saw you tell your truth without breaking. That took strength most people don't have. Elena felt tears rising again. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm being torn apart. That's what fighting back costs sometimes. But you're still standing. That's what matters. Why do you care? The question burst out. You barely know me. Why risk your reputation, your resources, everything, for someone like me? Dante was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something Elena had never heard from him before: vulnerability. When I was 16, I watched my mother get beaten by her boyfriend. He was a powerful man in our neighborhood, connected, protected. She was an immigrant with no papers, no family, no way to fight back. I tried to stop him once. He broke my arm in 3 places and told me if I ever tried again, he'd kill her. Elena held her breath. She died 2 years later. He beat her so badly one night and that she never woke up. The police called it an accident. His family made sure no charges were ever filed. I was 18, powerless, watching them bury my mother like her life didn't matter. His voice hardened. I swore that day that if I ever had power, I'd use it to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. That no one under my care would ever feel as helpless as my mother felt. I'm sorry, Elena whispered. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Don't be sorry. Use it. Remember that when you're in that courtroom, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for every person Marcus Whitmore ever hurt and every person he would have hurt if you hadn't survived. Your voice matters, Elena. Don't let anyone make you forget that. After they hung up, Elena sat in the darkness of her apartment, understanding for the first time why Dante Romano had become what he was. He wasn't just a criminal or a protector or a shadowy figure operating outside the law. He was a 16-year-old boy who'd watched his mother die and decided that power should protect, not destroy. The trial continued for 2 more weeks. The prosecution brought forensic experts who testified about the freezer's lock mechanism. It functioned perfectly, couldn't have malfunctioned as the defense claimed. They brought Marcus's former therapist who testified under subpoena about his entitlement issues and inability to accept rejection. They brought the other women he'd harassed, each one adding another layer to the pattern of abuse. The defense brought character witnesses, friends who swore Marcus was a good guy, family members who insisted this was all a misunderstanding, experts who suggested Elena might have accidentally locked herself in through some impossible series of events. But the evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, the medical records, the testimony of multiple victims all pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Marcus Whitmore had tried to kill Elena Vasquez because she'd refused his sexual advances. On the final day, both sides gave their closing arguments. Gerald Hawthorne made one last appeal to reasonable doubt, to the possibility of accident, to sympathy for a young man whose life was being destroyed. Sarah Chen demolished him. The defense wants you to believe this was an accident. That somehow, Elena Vasquez accidentally got dragged to a freezer, accidentally got locked inside, and accidentally stayed there for 24 hours while Marcus Whitmore accidentally forgot she existed. Sarah's voice dripped with contempt. That's not reasonable doubt. That's fantasy. The evidence is clear. Marcus Whitmore sexually assaulted Elena. When she fought back, he punished her by locking her in a freezer and leaving her to die. He didn't check on her, didn't call for help, didn't do anything except hope the problem would disappear. And if Dante Romano hadn't happened to inspect the property that day, Elena would have died. Her body would have been discovered days later. And the Whitmores would have called it a tragic accident, just like they've done with everything else Marcus has done. Sarah walked over to stand in front of the jury box. You have the power to say no more. To say that wealth and privilege don't put anyone above the law. To say that Elena Vasquez's life matters just as much as Marcus Whitmore's. I'm asking you to find him guilty. Not because you feel sorry for Elena, but because the evidence proves beyond any doubt that he's guilty of every charge. Do the right thing. Hold him accountable. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. Elena waited in a conference room with Sarah and Sophia, unable to eat, unable to think about anything except those 12 people deciding her truth's worth. When the call came that the jury had reached a verdict, Elena felt like she might throw up. They filed back into the courtroom. The gallery was packed, every seat filled. Dante Romano sat in his usual spot in the back, his face unreadable, but his presence solid as stone. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Morrison asked. We have, Your Honor. The foreman stood a middle-aged woman who'd been taking notes throughout the trial. On the charge of assault in the second degree, how do you find the defendant? Guilty. Elena's vision blurred with tears. On the charge of unlawful imprisonment? Guilty. Marcus slumped in his chair, his face gray. On the charge of reckless endangerment? Guilty. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged her gavel, calling for order. But the noise was deafening, reporters rushing for the exits, supporters crying, the Whitmores sitting in stunned silence as their son's life officially ended. Marcus was immediately taken back into custody. As the bailiffs led him away, he looked at Elena one last time. The hatred was gone, replaced by something worse understanding. He finally comprehended that his actions had consequences he couldn't buy his way out of. Outside the courthouse, Sarah held a press conference while Elena stood beside her, tears streaming down her face. Justice was served today, Sarah said simply. A jury of Marcus Whitmore's peers looked at the evidence and determined he was guilty of assault, unlawful imprisonment, and reckless endangerment. Sentencing will occur in 30 days, but the maximum penalty for these crimes is 15 years in prison. We will be advocating for the maximum sentence. Reporters shouted questions. Sarah answered a few, then gently guided Elena away from the cameras. In the car, Sophia held her sister while she cried not from sadness, but from relief so profound it felt like drowning. It's over, Sophia whispered. It's finally over. But Elena knew it wasn't quite over. There was still sentencing, still the appeals process that would drag on for months, still the reality of rebuilding her life from the ashes of what Marcus had destroyed. That night, there was a knock on her apartment door. Vincent Castellano stood there with a message. Mr. Romano would like to see you, if you're available. Elena was exhausted, emotionally wrung out, but she nodded. Where? He's downstairs. He didn't want to intrude. Elena grabbed her jacket and followed Vincent down to where a car waited. Dante stood beside it, hands in his pockets, looking up at the building. When he saw her, something shifted in his expression. Relief, satisfaction, something almost like pride. You won, he said simply. We won, Elena corrected. I couldn't have done it without you. You could have. You would have. I just made it easier. Dante studied her face. How do you feel? I don't know yet. Ask me in a week. He smiled slightly. Fair enough. I wanted to tell you in person that the job offer stands. Property manager, whenever you're ready. No pressure, no expectations. Just an opportunity if you want it. I want it. Elena surprised herself with how certain she sounded. I want to work, want to build something. Want to prove that I'm more than what happened to me. You already proved that, but I'm glad you'll be working for me. Dante pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is yours. Severance pay from the Whitmores, negotiated by their lawyers. They're required to pay you $50,000 for wrongful termination and emotional distress. Elena stared at the envelope. That's not nearly enough. But it's a start. Use it however you want, pay off debt, send your sister to school, save it for emergencies. It's yours. Elena took the envelope with shaking hands. $50,000? More money than she'd ever seen in one place. Money that represented acknowledgement, compensation, a future. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. For saving my life, for protecting me, for making sure I could fight back. You saved yourself, Elena. I just made sure you had the tools to do it. Dante moved toward the car, then paused. One more thing. Marcus Whitmore will appeal. His lawyers will try every trick in the book, but they won't get near you. Vincent and his team will remain available if you need anything. Security stays in place until the appeals are exhausted. Understood? Understood. Elena watched the car drive away, carrying Dante Romano back to whatever shadows he operated in, and felt something settle in her chest. Not peace, exactly, but something close. She'd walked into a freezer, certain she would die. She'd walked out of a courtroom having helped send her abuser to prison. And somewhere between those two moments, she'd stopped being a victim and become something else entirely. A survivor. A fighter. A woman who understood that justice sometimes required protection from people who operated outside the usual rules. 30 days later, Marcus Whitmore was sentenced to 12 years in prison. His parents sat in the front row, their empire crumbling around them, federal charges pending, assets frozen, reputation destroyed. The Whitmore name, once synonymous with wealth and power, was now synonymous with corruption and abuse. Elena attended the sentencing but didn't speak. She'd said everything she needed to say. Now she just watched as Marcus was led away in handcuffs, 12 years stretching before him like a desert. After the sentencing, Elena returned to work. She managed a residential building in Logan Square, handled tenant concerns, oversaw maintenance, made sure everything ran smoothly. It was honest work, good work, work that made her feel useful and competent. Sophia graduated from Northwestern that spring with honors. Elena sat in the audience, crying as her sister walked across the stage, thinking about how close they'd come to losing everything. Dante Romano remained a distant but constant presence. He never asked for thanks, never demanded anything in return for his protection. He simply ensured she was safe, employed, able to build the life she'd nearly lost. Sometimes, Elena saw him at the building conducting inspections, meeting with his property managers, conducting business. They'd exchange polite greetings, brief updates, nothing more. But there was an understanding between them, a recognition of what they'd survived together. 1 year after the trial, Elena stood on her apartment balcony watching the sunset over Chicago. She'd moved to a nicer place, paid for with her own salary and the settlement money she'd invested carefully. Sophia lived with her now, working at a biotech firm while studying for the MCAT. They'd survived. They'd built something. They were safe. Elena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You did good. D." She smiled, looking out at the city that had nearly killed her, but had ultimately given her justice. Somewhere in those lights, Dante Romano moved through shadows, protecting people who needed protecting, ensuring that some people couldn't hurt others without consequences. And somewhere in a maximum security prison, Marcus Whitmore understood too late that money and privilege couldn't protect you from everything, that some people would stand up and fight back, no matter how scared they were. That Elena Vasquez had been pushed down one too many times and had finally decided to stop falling. 6 months after Marcus Whitmore's sentencing, Elena Vasquez stood in front of a full-length mirror in a boutique on Michigan Avenue, staring at her reflection in disbelief. "You look beautiful," Sophia said from the chair behind her, smiling through tears. The dress was simple, navy blue, professional, elegant without being flashy. Elena barely recognized herself, not because of the dress, but because of the woman wearing it. Her shoulders were back, her chin lifted. The fear that had lived in her eyes for so long had been replaced by something harder, something earned. "I still can't believe this is happening," Elena whispered. "Believe it." Sophia stood, adjusting the collar of the dress. "You earned this, every single bit of it." The occasion was the Chicago Legal Defense Foundation's annual gala, a fundraiser for victims' rights advocacy. Sarah Chen had called 3 weeks earlier with an unexpected invitation. "The foundation wants to honor you," Sarah had said. "They're giving you the Courage Award for standing up to Marcus Whitmore. It's a big deal, Elena. Politicians, judges, activists. Your story is inspiring people." Elena had wanted to say no. The idea of standing in front of hundreds of powerful people, being celebrated for the worst thing that had ever happened to her, felt wrong somehow, like turning trauma into entertainment. But Sarah had pressed. "You don't understand what you've done. Since your case, 3 other women have come forward with assault charges against wealthy men they worked for. They all cited your testimony as inspiration. You started something, Elena. Something important." So here she was, trying on a dress she couldn't afford. Sophia had insisted on buying it as a gift, preparing to attend an event in a world she'd only ever seen from the outside. "Mr. Romano will be there," Sophia mentioned casually, watching Elena's reaction in the mirror. Elena's hand stilled on the dress fabric. "How do you know?" Vincent called, said Mr. Romano wanted to make sure you had transportation to the gala and that security arrangements were in place. Sophia's expression was knowing. "He's been watching out for you for over a year now. That's not normal employer behavior, Elena. He's protective of his people, that's all." "Is it?" Sophia moved in front of her sister, forcing eye contact. "Elena, I've seen how he looks at you, how you look at him. There's something there. There's gratitude, respect, nothing more." But Elena's voice lacked conviction. The truth was more complicated than she wanted to admit, even to herself. Dante Romano had saved her life, protected her through the trial, given her employment and security and a future. But he'd also become someone she thought about late at night when sleep wouldn't come. Someone whose rare approval meant more than it should. Someone who existed in her life like gravity, invisible but constant, shaping everything around it. "He's a good man," Elena said finally. "In his own way. But we live in different worlds, Sophia. He's what he is. And I'm just—" "Stop." Sophia gripped her shoulders. "You're not just anything. You're the woman who survived attempted murder and sent her attacker to prison. You're the property manager who increased tenant satisfaction by 40% in 6 months. You're my sister who sends money to Mama every month, even though you don't have to anymore. You're extraordinary, Elena. And if Dante Romano sees that, maybe you should see it too." The gala was held at the Four Seasons Hotel in a ballroom that looked like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables set with fine china and fresh flowers. Women in designer gowns mingled with men in tuxedos. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than Elena's weekly grocery budget. Elena felt like an imposter. Vincent Castellano met her at the entrance, offering his arm with old-world courtesy. "Miss Vasquez, you look lovely." "Thank you, Vincent. Is Mr. Romano here?" "He's at table 12. He asked me to escort you there when you arrived." Table 12 was toward the front, near the stage where the awards would be presented. As Vincent guided her through the crowd, Elena felt eyes following her. People recognized her from the news coverage, from the trial. Some smiled supportively. Others whispered behind their hands. Then she saw Dante. He stood near the table talking with an older gentleman, wearing a tuxedo that fit him like it was made for his body, which it probably was. His dark hair was styled back, his face clean-shaven, and when he turned and saw Elena approaching, something shifted in his expression. Not surprise. Not even appreciation exactly. Something deeper. Something that made Elena's breath catch. "Elena." He excused himself from his conversation and came to meet her. "You look." He paused, seeming to search for the right word. "Strong. You look strong. Not beautiful. Not pretty. Strong." It was the perfect thing to say. "Thank you for the invitation. And the dress, Sophia told me you sent it." "I sent options. She chose that one." "Good choice." Dante gestured to the table where several other people were seated: lawyers, activists, people Elena recognized from news coverage of various social justice initiatives. "You'll be sitting with us. Sarah Chen is here somewhere, probably terrorizing politicians into supporting her next victims' rights bill." As if summoned, Sarah appeared, elegant in a burgundy gown, her prosecutor's intensity softened by genuine warmth when she saw Elena. "There she is, Chicago's bravest." Sarah hugged her, tightly. "Ready for your big moment?" "Terrified, actually." "Good. Terror means you're alive." Sarah pulled back, studying Elena's face. "You know what you're going to say?" "I wrote something, probably terrible." "It'll be perfect because it's true." Sarah squeezed her hand. "Just speak from here." She touched Elena's heart. "That's all anyone needs to hear." The dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Elena sat between Dante and a family law attorney named Marcus Chen, no relation to Sarah, who spent the meal telling stories about his work with immigrant families that made Elena laugh despite her nerves. Dante remained mostly quiet, speaking when spoken to but otherwise watching the room with that careful attention she'd come to recognize. He was always watching, always assessing, always 3 steps ahead of whatever might threaten the people he protected. Halfway through dinner, a man approached their table, tall, silver-haired, expensively suited. Elena recognized him from news coverage. Jonathan Pierce, a real estate developer and major political donor. His family ran in the same circles as the Whitmores. "Romano," Pierce said, his voice carrying just enough disdain to be insulting. "Didn't expect to see you at an event like this." Thought this was for legitimate business people. The table went quiet. Dante set down his wine glass with deliberate care. Pierce, still buying politicians with dirty money, I see. How is that working out for you? Pierce's face reddened. At least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. You can put on a tuxedo and write checks to charity, but everyone knows what you really are. Yes, they do. Dante's voice was soft, dangerous. They know I'm someone who protects people, who stands up when others stay silent, who ensures that men like Marcus Whitmore face consequences for their actions. He paused. Speaking of which, how is your son doing? Still working at your company despite that sexual harassment complaint last? The year that mysteriously disappeared? Pierce's jaw clenched. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know the settlement was $300,000. I know the victim was 19 years old. I know your lawyers made her sign an NDA. Dante stood slowly, his height and presence suddenly overwhelming. I know that if it happens again, there won't be any NDAs or settlements. There'll just be consequences. Are we clear? Pierce stepped back involuntarily. Around them, other tables had noticed the confrontation, conversations dying as people watched. You're threatening me. I'm promising you. Dante's smile didn't reach his eyes. Now I believe you have other people to bother. Somewhere else. Pierce left, but not before shooting Elena a look of pure contempt. She understood what it meant. You did this. You started this. You made it so men like us have to watch our backs. Good, Elena thought with sudden fierceness. Let them. Watch their backs. Let them be afraid for once. Dante sat back down, his expression returning to neutral as if nothing had happened. Under the table, Elena felt his hand brush hers brief contact, probably accidental, but it sent electricity up her arm. Thank you, she whispered, for standing up for that girl. Whoever she is, someone needs to. Dante picked up his wine again. Men like Pierce think their money makes them untouchable. They need to be reminded it doesn't. After dinner, the awards began. Elena sat through several presentations to other honorees, a judge who'd reformed bail practices, an activist who'd organized for housing rights, a journalist who'd exposed police corruption. Each one received applause and a crystal trophy that caught the light like captured stars. Then Sarah Chen took the stage to present the Courage Award. This next honoree, Sarah began, her voice filling the ballroom, represents everything this foundation stands for. She's a young, immigrant woman who came to America seeking a better life. She worked 2 jobs to support her family. She kept her head down, stayed invisible, and tried to do everything right. And then someone hurt her because he thought he could, because he thought his wealth and privilege made him untouchable. The room was silent, everyone knowing who Sarah was talking about. Elena Vasquez could have stayed silent, could have taken a settlement and disappeared like so many victims before her. Instead, she stood up. She testified. She faced her attacker in court and told the truth, even when powerful lawyers tried to destroy her credibility, even when the media dissected her life, even when it would have been so much easier to just give up. Sarah paused, emotion thick in her voice. Because of Elena's courage, Marcus Whitmore is in prison. Because of her testimony, 3 other women found the strength to come forward with their own accusations against powerful men. Because of her example, countless others who've been victimized now know that justice is possible, that their voices matter, that they don't have to stay silent. Sarah looked toward Elena's table. Elena, would you please come up here? Elena's legs felt like water as she stood. Dante caught her hand for just a second, his grip steady and strong. You've got this, he murmured. The walk to the stage felt like miles. Applause thundered around her, hundreds of people standing, but Elena barely heard it. She was back in that freezer, alone and dying, back in that courtroom, facing Marcus's hatred, back in every moment when she'd been terrified and powerless and certain she wouldn't survive. But she had survived. She was here. Sarah handed her the crystal trophy and stepped back, giving Elena the microphone. The ballroom waited. Elena looked out at the sea of faces. At Sophia in the front row, crying openly. At Sarah, beaming with pride. At Dante, his dark eyes steady and certain, reminding her without words that she was strong enough for this. I didn't feel courageous, Elena began, her voice shaking but audible. When I was locked in that freezer, when I thought I was going to die, I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified. I felt small. I felt like I'd made a mistake by fighting back, by saying no, by thinking my voice mattered. She gripped the trophy tighter. but someone told me once that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing what's right anyway. It's about standing up when every instinct tells you to stay down. It's about believing that your truth matters even when powerful people tell you it doesn't. Elena's eyes found Dante's in the crowd. I had help. So much help. A prosecutor who believed me. A legal system that, for once, worked the way it was supposed to. And someone who protected me when I had no way to protect myself. Someone who showed me that power can be used to shield people, not just hurt them. She didn't say his name. She didn't need to. Everyone in that room knew who she meant. I'm accepting this award, but it doesn't belong to me alone. It belongs to every victim who found the courage to speak up. To every person who protected someone when they could have looked away. To everyone who believes that justice isn't just for the rich and connected, but for all of us, especially for those of us who society says don't matter. Elena's voice grew stronger, fed by something deep inside the rage she'd been too scared to feel in that freezer. The power she'd discovered in that courtroom, the certainty that she was worth fighting for. Marcus Whitmore thought he could hurt me without consequences. He was wrong, and every person like him needs to understand. We're not staying silent anymore. We're not disappearing. We're standing up, speaking out, and demanding the justice we deserve. And we're not going to stop until everyone is held accountable for their actions, regardless of how much money they have, or how powerful their family is. The applause was deafening. People stood, cheering, and Elena felt tears streaming down her face, not from sadness or fear, but from something that felt like freedom. She'd walked into this ballroom uncertain she belonged. She was leaving knowing she belonged anywhere she damn well chose to be. After the ceremony, Elena found herself on the hotel's terrace, needing air and a moment alone. The November night was cold, but she welcomed it. Cold meant alive. Cold meant surviving. You were magnificent. Elena turned to find Dante stepping out onto the terrace, carrying his jacket. Without asking, he draped it around her shoulders. It smelled like expensive cologne and something uniquely him. I was terrified, Elena admitted. I know. That's what made it magnificent. Dante stood beside her at the railing, looking out at Chicago's glittering skyline. You know what Pierce said earlier about me pretending to be something I'm not? He's an asshole. Dante laughed a real laugh, rare and genuine. True, but he wasn't completely wrong. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done things that would horrify you, hurt people, made choices that can't be undone. I operate in shadows because that's where I belong. Then why are you telling me this? Because you deserve honesty. Dante turned to face her, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. I protected you because it was right, because men like Marcus Whitmore need to be stopped, but also because from the moment I found you in that freezer, I couldn't stop thinking about you, about your strength, your refusal to give up, the way you looked at me without fear even though you knew what I was. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. Dante, I'm not asking for anything, he interrupted gently. I just need you to know that helping you wasn't just about justice or protection or sending a message to powerful men. It was about you, specifically you. And if that changes how you see me, I understand. Elena stared at him, this complicated, dangerous man who'd saved her life and asked nothing in return, who'd given her justice when she had no way to claim it herself, who'd stood between her and everything that wanted to destroy her. You know what I see when I look at you? She asked quietly. A criminal. A killer. Someone who operates outside the law. I see the person who opened that freezer door, who wrapped me in his jacket when I was freezing, who made sure I had the tools to fight back. Elena stepped closer. I see someone who understands that the world isn't divided into good people and bad people. It's divided into people who protect others and people who hurt them. And you, Dante Romano, protect people. Elena, she kissed him. It was brief, tentative, her lips barely brushing his before she pulled back, suddenly terrified she'd misread everything. But Dante's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. When he kissed her back, it was slow and careful, like he was afraid she might break. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Elena felt something click into place inside her chest. This is complicated, Dante said, his forehead resting against hers. Everything about us is complicated. I can't promise you a normal life. Can't promise safety or simplicity or— I don't want promises, Elena interrupted. I want honesty. I want someone who sees me as strong, not broken. Someone who understands that I survived something terrible and came out the other side different, but not less. You're not less. You're more. Dante's hand remained on her face. You're everything, Elena, and that terrifies me more than anything I've ever done. They stood there on the terrace, wrapped in his jacket and the Chicago night, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and discovered something neither expected. So what happens now? Elena asked. Now? Dante smiled slightly. Now you keep building your life, keep being extraordinary, and I keep making sure nothing and no one hurts you ever again. And us? We figure it out as we go. He kissed her forehead. One day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just possibility. Elena nodded, feeling tears threaten again, but these were different. These were the tears of someone who'd walked through fire and found something beautiful on the other side. 6 months ago, she'd been locked in a freezer, certain she would die. Tonight, she stood on a terrace, accepting an award for courage, kissed by a man who'd shown her that protection and power didn't have to come from the same place. She'd been pushed down so many times, but she'd learned something that Marcus Whitmore, Jonathan Pierce, and every man like them would never understand. Some people, when you push them down, don't stay down. They get back up. They fight back. They find strength they didn't know they had. And they never, ever stay silent again. Elena Vasquez had started as a maid trying to survive. She'd become a survivor learning to fight. And now she was something else entirely, a woman who knew her own worth and refused to let anyone make her forget it. The future was uncertain, complicated, maybe even dangerous. But for the first time in her life, Elena faced it without fear. Because she wasn't alone. She was protected. She was strong. And she was finally, completely, free. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.